Hi, I'm Aarati Krishnan. Welcome to episode 13 of Question of Money. This time we'll look at when should you buy a home. Recently on a trip to Bengaluru, I met a young woman called Sameeksha. So she was recounting all the woes that she had with rented apartments and was swearing that she wants to buy a flat immediately. I could empathize with her. She had dealt with cranky landlords who didn't want to rent out apartments to single women, lots of rules and restrictions on what she could do in the rented flat, apartment societies which had weird rules like no pets, etc. After paying a rent of about 60,000 for a 3 BHK flat which she was sharing with her friends and a hefty security deposit of 3 lakhs or so, she had to face all these problems. But after a short chat, I managed to convince her that this was not the right time for her to buy an apartment. These were the reasons that I gave her. Early in your career, it is safe to assume that you would not have a very large sum saved up to buy an apartment. So when you buy a home, you have to put up down payment. Typically, the down payment is quite large and you may not have that much money when you are young. So you will be looking to fund your house with at least a 90% loan, 90% of property value or so. Suppose you decide to buy an apartment for 1.5 crore, you have to foot the bill for 90% of that through a home loan, that will come to about 1.35 crore. Now if you do some simple EMI calculations at an 8.5% interest, the EMI for this comes to about 1.17 lakh per month. Now, personal finance thumb rules tell you that your EMI should never exceed 30 to 40% of your salary. If you take 40% as the number, this means that you should be making as much as 3 lakh a month in order to afford this modest 2 BHK apartment inside the city. Now, some people choose to violate this personal finance thumb rule and all, and they sign up for a very hefty EMI. But what happens if you do that is, the EMI will squeeze out all the other expenditure that you can make. So if you're planning to have little luxuries like vacationing or buying a car or say even buying a MacBook, that will become very difficult once you take on this very big EMI early in your career. So this can cause a lot of pain which may not make up for the joy of owning the house. In order to reduce the price, if you buy an apartment far out in the suburbs, then your daily commute can be a real pain too. Instead, it is far easier to rent a 2 BHK in a nice locality in a city by paying 30 or 40K a month without all these hassles. When you are young, to make the most of your qualifications and your experience, you should have complete mobility. Suppose you are working in one city and get an offer from somewhere else, owning a home can be a real liability at such times. This is because rents in India are a fraction of the EMIs. Now suppose you bought that swanky apartment in Bangalore, the 2 BHK that we talked of, for an EMI of 1.17 lakh a month, and you got an offer from an MNC in Mumbai and you wanted to move there. Imagine what will happen. You will have to rent this apartment out for 40,000. You will be paying the EMI of 1.17 lakh. In Bombay, given the rents there, you may have to pay a higher rent there also in order to rent a similar apartment, say 50K. Now, this can put such a squeeze on your finances that you may decide not to take the offer at all. That will be a lost opportunity for your career. In the early part of your career, it is best to avoid obligations and loans that can tie you down to a single location. Now, a third reason why you may not like to buy a home when you're very young is inflexibility. Typically, a home loan is taken for a minimum of 15 years. It can go up to 20 years or 25 years depending on affordability. Our life situation can change quite a lot over the period of 10 years or 15 years. In fact, COVID taught us that even predicting what will happen 2 or 3 years down the line is quite difficult. So, do you know where you would like to live and settle for the rest of your life? What if you find a partner who wants to live in another city from the one you have chosen? What if your parents are dependent and need your help at some point in time? So, all these things can actually decide the location where you would like to be at any given point in your life. Suppose you tie yourself down to a home in a particular location and need to move later for these reasons, then it becomes a big problem for you to move because of the EMI that is holding you down. So this inflexibility is another reason why you shouldn't commit to a 15 or 20-year loan obligation when you're very young and you're just starting out in your career. I know people who bought homes very young when they're in their 20s, etc. By the time they turn 50 or so, they are looking to retire shortly, and they find that the flat that they bought has become very old and requires lot of maintenance and actually has lost value also. At that time, they need to upgrade their home again and shell out EMIs, take on a loan and so on. It becomes very difficult at that stage. This is another reason why you may like to postpone buying a home until you know where you would like to live and settle. So having said all this about why you should not buy a home when you're young, when should you actually buy a home? I feel you should buy it when three conditions are met. One, you should have enough savings of your own and investments to meet at least 50% of the cost of the property so that your EMIs will be quite manageable. Secondly, you should have decided where you want to actually settle down and live and work for the rest of your life. Thirdly, you have enough investments to take care of your other life goals such as marriage, say higher education, funding your children and so on. So buy a good home by all means if that's your dream, but do make sure you do it at the right time of your life. In the upcoming episode of Question of Money, we are going to address a nice question from a viewer. How can I stop being a spendthrift?